You want to know what one of the best feelings is? Whenever you find a new series to read or watch or to play or whatever your preferred media is, and you just fall in love with it immediately and like completely immerse yourself in it. Where, like, if it's a manga and there's like a couple of volumes out there, you instantly want to read like every single chapter back to back. If it's a video game, you're playing that sucker until the sun comes up. If it's a television show, you're binging the whole season, okay? Bonus points if you stumbled upon it completely by accident, like I did with Demons of the Shadow Realm or Yomi no Tsugai, the newest series by Hiromu Arakawa, who of course is the mangaka of Full Metal Alchemist. So that's why that's back there. Also Silver Spoon, which is her series that she did after Full Metal, and I never really got into that, so let me know if it's any good or not. But I was in the bookstore a couple days ago, and I see this, and my first thought before I even saw the mangaka was, are they making a spin-off manga of Riza Hawkeye from Full Metal Alchemist? Because I just say, like, the main character, like, they're very similar. Like, look, even the bangs are the same. It's just Rule 63 Riza or whatever. But anyway, caught my interest, if nothing else. And so then I'm like, well, yeah, it's by the same mangaka of Full Metal. You can kind of tell immediately. And I'm like, this looks pretty good. And you know what? I have not heard anything about this series. I'm sure somebody probably recommended it to me like a year ago when this came out. It was early 2022 when this was released. It's up to about 17 chapters right now. It's released monthly. And so it just gets drowned out in the sea of recommendations that I have gotten being a, manga YouTuber for like the last decade or so, right? So anybody that suggested this to me a year ago and I haven't checked it out, I apologize for that. But no, seriously, this is amazing. It's good. If you liked Full Metal Alchemist, you'll love this. Like, seriously, if you really love Full Metal Alchemist and you're sitting there and you're just like, man, ever since Full Metal Alchemist, I really haven't found something to fill that void. Yeah, no, go check this out. You'll love it immediately, okay? So I'm going to talk about this today, Yomi no Tsugai, or Demons of the Shadow Realm. I love the localized translations. Sometimes localized translations can be kind of cringe, but I love this. I love the spelling of demon as demons. It reminds me, this is my favorite spelling, by the way. It reminds me of, if you've ever read Frankenstein, like the book Frankenstein, the Modern Prometheus by Mary Shelley. She describes Frankenstein's monster, the monster, as a daemon, spelled like this. And that was the first time I ever saw the writing of that. And I was like, that is so much cooler than just demon, daemon, And Shadow Realm, that just makes me think of Yu-Gi-Oh, but whatever. Okay, so I'm going to talk about this series now, all right? But I honestly have to tell you, spoilers ahead of time, so go check it out. Like I said, it's only 17 chapters. Some of the chapters are really long, though, which is really immersive. Sometimes a chapter will start off continuing the previous, battle, and then the battle will end, and then the middle of the chapter will be a bunch of characters talking after the battle, and then we'll move on to the next story arc, all within, the same chapter. So they're very long, but they're so damn good, all right? And I read the whole series in pretty much one night, read the first 4 chapters in this volume, and I think this is the only volume that's out right now, officially in English. So I read this and then immediately was like, okay, I gotta read the rest of this, okay? I'll talk about the plot a little bit, but honestly, I gotta talk to you about the theme of this manga. I gotta talk to you about the tone. I gotta talk to you about the characters. Arakawa does characterization so well. She is honestly one of the best. You get the impression most characters she puts in her manga are people that she's met in real life and adapted them into manga format perfectly well. She's done her research on this, and when she writes a character, they feel like a genuine human being with the way that they talk, with the way that they react to things. It's just little things in this manga that it makes it feel more real, I guess, is the best way for me to describe it. Okay, so first and foremost, the theme of this manga is that of duality, all right? Two halves of the same coin, yin and yang, mesh together. That is the theme of this, and it carries through the characters that we're going to meet. It carries through the power system that Arakawa developed for this. It carries through the overall message. It carries through everything, okay? And you get that impression in the very first chapter, in the very first few pages, when 2 children are born, one with black hair, one with blonde hair, one representing the morning and one representing the night, okay? Being named after the night and the morning, okay? And so from like the very first chapter, I was like, okay, I can kind of see where she's going with this. But it is written in such an interesting, original, and just beautiful way of how that duality is expressed in all these little facets throughout the manga. Some of it's very overt, like the fact that the main character here is Yuru, and he is named after night, and then his sister, Asa, named after morning. That's just an obvious one, and also their abilities are also in the sense of duality, because every single person that has an ability in this story has not just one ability, but two that are personified in the titular daemons, okay? They each have a Tsugai, or a team of Tsugai, all right? So it's basically like, I hesitate to say it's like stands from JoJo, because it is not. I'm just saying, like, you know how in JoJo you got stands? Imagine, like, everyone that has a power in this world gets two stands, and they each have abilities that complement one another, okay? So, like, for example, there's a character in this really awesome character that is a manga artist, okay? And his two Tsugai are black and whites, and the white aspect of his ability erases things, and the black aspect of his ability draws things like ink. Very similar to Ichibei Hyosubi, the monk from Squad Zero from Bleach, kind of like that on a much more downgraded scale, because Ichibei is like a basically a god in Bleach. But in this series, it's kind of like that. And every single power, every single different pair of Tsugai are so unique and so cool, and their abilities. This series, like I said, is only 17 chapters in. So, more than anything, it gets me excited for what is to come, because all the clever ways you could utilize these powers are just like the sky's the limit. It's the same thing with alchemy in Full Metal, where you get introduced to alchemy relatively early on to see the stuff that Ed can do with it and everything like that, and it's like, wow, this could be used in so many different ways, not just in combat, which, you know, most battles shown in manga focus primarily on that. I control lightning, so I will shoot lightning at people. I control fire, I will shoot fire at people. Yeah, they can be used in combat, most certainly, but it's all these other little facets, just like with alchemy, that are utilized throughout this entire story. This is extremely popular from what I understand so far. The magazine that it's printed in has like it on the front cover every single week. It's like a flagship series, so I think it's going to last for quite some time. Dude, I don't know if Arakawa plans on making this a series as long as Full Metal, which lasted well over 100 chapters of a monthly serialized series, keep in mind, because much longer chapters. I don't know if she's planning on something like that, but God, I hope so. I hope this sticks around for a while. Okay? The main character, Yuru, his two Tsugai, his two demons that he has, represent left and right, okay? Right takes the embodiment of a large muscular man, and he's very expressive, very emotional to everybody around him. And then left takes the personification of a rather serious, not very expressive, stoic, big sister type of character. So, love that right out of the gate. That's pretty cool. And so, they're basically these two guardian, like, Shisa statues that are outside of Yuru's village, and they take this embodiment form when Yuru awakens them, and they are his daemons, his Tsugai that he commands, okay? Now, another clever thing that Arakawa did that really just leaves it to freeform on how things can develop. She doesn't really restrict herself a lot with this power system, and I love that, okay? Because a lot of times when you introduce this, it's like, oh, okay, you do a contract with the demons, and then they're bound to whatever you say. There is a contract aspect of this, and it does involve blood, because why wouldn't it? But it is not the kind of aspect of you are bound and you have to do exactly what I say at all given times. It's not like that, okay? So there's a little bit more free form for how they can act, and, you know, their antics can have, they like play off each other, you know, one being, you know, very boastful, very expressive, and another one being very stoic and serious. The way they play off each other just leads to an inherent comedy. And you know what? Actually, now that I brought that up, I just realized that another way that Arakawa uses the theme of duality here is through the comedy, because there's a lot of, just like Full Metal Alchemist, it's overall a very serious manga, but there's so many good genuine moments for comedy, mostly because of the way she utilizes the characters. But here, most of it is through that like the double act, you know, straight man, funny man, Laurel and Hardy type comedy, right? So with right and left, it's pretty obvious, but then there's other versions, variations, permeations of that double act that Arakawa is utilizing depending on the characters, and it works in so many different ways. So you have right and left, who are these daemons, these demons that have lived, they've been sealed away for like 400 years. Okay, so they're back in the world now. This takes place in contemporary modern Japan, like in 2022, okay? We'll get to that, because that's another way. The fact this takes place in a contemporary setting is really cool. So, Yuru as well is from a village that basically sheltered him his whole life, making him think he was still in like the Edo period. So he's also kind of like a fish out of water in this whole sense, where he's just like, what? Modern society? What is that cell phone? What is that? And people having to explain to him like what phones are. Like, oh yeah, these are, it's like a smoke signal. Because it's like he was raised in a village that everybody just made him think he was in like the year 1650 or something like that. So now he has to kind of come to terms with that. So I love that aspect of it, and we'll get to it. But then you have Yuru and his sister Asa, who were separated when they were children, with Yuru still living in this village, sheltered off from all of modern society. And then Asa, who was taken out into the world and has experienced modern society. Okay, so she's used to everything now, because she's been out in the modern world for like well over a decade or some such. Okay, so it's them being brother and sister but separated, so there's not really like, it's kind of weird like on how they really interact with one another, and so they don't neither of them really know, but that kind of just inherently creates like a comedy act right there, where like one of the first things that Asa says upon meeting her brother out in the world for like one of the first times in like 10 years she hasn't seen her brother, is like, she's really serious, like, I gotta tell you some important stuff about the stuff you've missed, but can I give you a hug? And he's like, no. It's like, this is weird, And she keeps saying that like throughout the entire chapter, like, okay, I'll tell you the really serious stuff about what happened to our parents. And then can I get a hug? Just like, okay, what? And then they finally do hug, and it's a cute little moment. It's nice, okay? So there's like different like comedy duos here. There's Yuru's guardians, Dara and Hana, who were basically like, they worked for the village, kind of bringing them supplies for years, okay? And so they're essentially Yuru's guardians to kind of protect him while he's in the outside world, okay? And so Dara and Hana are just co-workers, right? They're not romantically involved at all. And then Dara is just like, we should probably tend to be a married couple while we're taking care of Yuru. And then Hana is just like, oh, but my heart is for Jason Statham. You don't look anything like Jason Statham. And I'm just like, okay, the fact that this is what I mean about the characterization in this. This is why it's so funny, because that's something you could like naturally hear somebody saying, like, oh my god, I gotta get married to you, my coworker. You don't look like, you're not my type at all. You don't look like Keanu Reeves. Oh my goodness. It's just like that little kind of sense of humor. She does amazing, okay? So it's like, that's another comedy duo there. Then we get to these three brothers that work for this family that are sheltering Asa. So Yoru's guardians are Dara and Hana, and then Asa's guardians are this very affluent family living in Japan that have like a big mansion they live in and bodyguards and everything, like the head of the family and all that stuff. And there's three brothers that work for this family, Jin, Asuma, and Hikaru. Jin reminding me a lot of Mustang from Full Metal Alchemist. And then there's Asuma, who is set up so much like he's the evil one. Like, he's the quiet, stoic, just like, hello there, yes, I am totally not the villain in this series. But he totally is. So, which makes me think that it's like, okay, it's so on the nose with this guy, it's probably going to be a twist later on, or maybe not, who knows. And then Hikaru is the eldest of the siblings, who has the ability of black and white. He's the one he's the manga artist that's able to like erase things and then draw new things and stuff like that. So that ability is really useful. And then there's a bunch of other people in the family. Gene, the guy that looks like Mustang a little bit, he has an ability called Scavenger. So the Tsugai, they all have a name that encapsulates both of their Tsugai. Both of like their whole ability has a name, and then each individual Tsugai has a personal name as well. So he has a Tsugai named Scavenger, and then each of his Tsugai are named Love and then Truth. and these Tsugai take the form of these anglerfish. One is like a giant anglerfish that can like eat a person, and the angle, like the little lure thing on their head, can take the appearance of other people to distract them. So you go to attack something, and it's like you think it's a human being, and it's oops, it's just a lure, and this thing comes out and like eats you. And then the other fish is a smaller anglerfish that can spit out anything that the bigger one consumed. Now, I've seen this kind of ability before in other manga, like I can absorb anything and then spit it back out. But the way it was utilized, once again, with not just like random portals or whatever, but like I have these two fish. One is a big fish that eats a bunch of stuff, and this is a small fish that can spit them out. And he stores guns and a bunch of stuff in there that he can just kind of pull out whenever, and knives and everything like that, first aid supplies, whatever he needs. He gets his ankle sliced at one point by Yuru, and he pulls out like a crutch, and he's walking around on that for the arc. That's another thing too. The realism in the way this stuff is depicted, because getting sliced with a hatchet or a knife or whatever in manga, pretty standard stuff, right? You get slashed and it's like not a big deal, and you finish the rest of the fight and you just have a bandage on it and it's whatever. I love the realism of the way this is handled, where no, dude, if you got the back of your ankle hacked by a damn hatchet, you know, and this is like not a standard hatchet. This is like a medieval Japan kind of hatchet. It's basically a damn like butcher knife, or not even a butcher knife. It's like a meat cleaver he basically uses, right? Yuru slashes him with this thing. And it's like, dude, he has to go get stitches, and he's getting stitched up, and then he's getting bandaged. And he's like, even if you're like a trained soldier, not going to be able to just to walk that off, right? And then he spends the rest of this arc, which is like an invasion of the mansion, like people are attacking, and he has to fight a bunch of other Tsugai. He's like walking around on a crutch. So it's like that makes it a little realistic. This big fight occurs, like a big anime battle happens in this mansion, and like after the fighting is over and after the family wins and they kill all the intruders, the following day they make a point to show that like, no, this mansion got wrecked, all right? Like, it might just seem like a minor insignificant thing, and on the grand scheme it is, but I love the sense of realism there, where, dude, if you had an anime battle in the middle of a mansion, that place is going to be wrecked. You know, there's walls that are busted down, ceilings collapse, the electricity's off in half of it. They're like scooping up brains and gore on the front porch after they just shot a bunch of these invaders. They're out there with like brooms and mops, like mopping all the blood off the front deck. And it's like, then that's where the guy with the manga artist shows up, and he's like, oh no, the big room where we're going to have breakfast got destroyed. I'll just erase it with my ability and then cover it back up and then redraw it, and we'll be good, right? That's another thing too. It's almost like Arakawa is aware that it's like, yeah, people are reading this manga partly because of these really interesting abilities, and she shows this off very early on. She'll show an example of how the ability is used to kind of whet your appetite a little bit and be like, oh yeah, this is going to be really cool when it's utilized later on down the line. You can imagine all the things you can do with that, right? There's another member of the family, his name's Fuyuki, and his Tsugai is called Blacklist, and it takes the form of a disembodied ghost hand and a book, and the book is like made out of flesh like the damn Necronomicon, and it's got like lips on it, and so anything the hand grabs, the book will just read everything. So if the hand will grab a pair of Tsugai, it instantly knows the name of the Tsugai, the name of the ability, how the ability works, the name of the person that it's contracted with, when they were born, what their age is, anything of their backstory. Basically, like Blacklist, you just know everything about this person. So that's one that's really cool. Let's see, what else? I talked about Jean's ability. I'm just going through the Tsugai here because that's one of the most interesting parts. Oh, there's Gab. I forgot about her. She's really cool. She works alongside the family. She's like best friends to Asa, Yuru's sister, right? And so she wears this really cool like raincoat kind of thing, and her Tsugai are the form of an upper and lower jaw. So they basically take the appearance of these disembodied like teeth that have eyes all over them, okay? And she just like does this, and then just the teeth will just devour and chomp and destroy everything around them. And so the teeth are named Gabrielle, and she gave them really long, elaborate names, and which is very typical to this kind of like comedy. Let's see. And oh yeah, each of the Tsugai, they have like a thing that plays off each other, like black and white, love and truth. Hana's ability is front tiger and rear wolf, which take the form of a kitty cat and a little dog, which is great, and that's meant for like searching and reconnaissance. Yeah, that's really neat. Now, the most important ability in the aspect of this kind of goes beyond just Tsugai in that sense, because Yuru has two Tsugai right and left, but there's an overall ability that these two siblings share, and that's a main focus for this entire manga. The ability of Fu and the ability of Kai, okay? Kai being the ability to break or open anything, and Fu being the ability to seal anything, okay? And there's a prophecy around the birth of these children where every 400 years, two children, siblings, are born that have the potential, not always, but have the potential to awaken these abilities. And the idea is if both the ability to seal and the ability to break are unlocked at the same time, both siblings have this power, then serious shit's gonna go down, kind of a thing, okay? And as of right now in the story, Asa has the ability of break. She awakened the ability of break. So she can just kind of do this movement and she just kind of destroys or obliterates anything around her, okay? And then Yuru supposedly will unlock the power of Fu, which is the ability to seal anything, which has been used to seal various Tsugai in the past, that kind of deal, right? Now, in order to unlock these abilities, minor caveat, you gotta die. Like, you literally gotta die. Like, it's none of that, like, oh, you enter a state of half-death. No, you literally have to die. Asa got a knife through her head. That's how she died. She literally got a butcher knife shoved through her eye socket, and she died. And then she went into the afterlife and met the ghost, and it was just like, you can either choose to just die, like, if you just want to, natural progression of things, you can just die, or you can unlock this power, the ability of Kai to break anything around you. Now, thing about that is you have this ability, you are basically a god to other people around you, and you could be a superhero, and you could do all this kind of stuff. The price to pay for this is great. I love the price you pay for this, because you could easily write this off as like the price to pay for this kind of ability is half your lifespan, or the price to pay for this ability is I don't know, your best friend has to die or something like that. No, the only price that one has to pay for unlocking this power and coming back to life in the process is you will be manipulated and you will be used by people for the rest of your life. Which, on the surface, that seems pretty low cost. It's just like, you mean nobody else has to die? Like, no. My lifespan's not going to get cut in half? No. Just like, you will be used and manipulated by everybody around you for the rest of your days because you have this power. That is the cost. That is the price you must pay. And you actually sit back and think about that and ruminate on that for a moment, because it might not seem like much at first, but if you really keep in mind, Yuru and Asa are both teenagers. They're both like 16 years old when they unlock these abilities. So you get the idea that what the idea that Arakawa is going for here is that it's going to be an overall arc of this story is going to be these two siblings manipulated by these two parties here. And we don't even really know to what extent fully. With Yuru, we have his two guardians, Dara and Hana, who seem like up-and-up people that are really nice. Dara is a hoot, man. He is very hilarious, but also he can, like, become super serious badass at the drop of a hat. So he's really fun, but he's connected to this family. His father is a big mystery right now on who this person is, and that he knows, like, a lot of stuff about the village and about this legend and this prophecy between Asa and Yuru. So we don't know anything about him yet, so that's a little bit up in the air on what his family's all about. Then we have the Kagemori family, which is the family that is watching Asa. And it's like, obviously Asuma, the dude that's like very stoic, like, hello there, kind of reminds me of Kimberly a little bit from Full Metal, little bit with that kind of character. Not like homicidal to that point yet, although we don't know much about this character. So it's like, we definitely get the vibe that both groups, both guardians of these siblings, have their own agendas, even if they're not aware that they have their own agendas. Like, in one way or another, they have their own agendas to kind of bend Yuru and Asa to their own means and their own agendas and their own goals and ambitions, regardless of what they really feel about it. And like I said, the manga is still relatively new, only a couple volumes in like 17 chapters, so there's only so much that has been revealed so far. But yeah. Another aspect of this, as I alluded to earlier, is the fact that Yuru grew up in a village that was isolated from the rest of the world, and this was meant for his protection, although the people that run the village, once again, we don't really know much about them. But this village was essentially sealed off deep in the mountains, so not any ordinary person could reach that place. It's one of those things like, you hear a lot of tales like this in like Japanese folklore, like tales of yokai and stuff, where you get lost in the woods and you circle around this one shrine like 6 times, and you double back and you make a left, you make a right at the spirit tree, and you end up in the secret spirit world or whatever. It's kind of like that. Like, so every once in a while a hiker will get lost in the woods and wind up in this like village that's like, you know, taking place out of time, but ordinarily it just doesn't really happen. So this village exists in the modern world. It's not like a time warp or anything, like you're actually going back to the Edo period. There's just a mountain that's kind of guarded with a barrier, and that's where Yuru grew up. Okay, Asa also grew up there for a time, but was taken away by her parents. Yuru and Asa's parents, that's a big mystery right now on where they're at. They apparently went missing on a plane, and we have no idea what happened to them. So that's another mystery. Like, they're trying to find their birth parents right now. That's a big one. So it's interesting because in the first chapter, it sets it up like this is going to be a period piece. Like, Yuru is growing up in this village, and it's explained away pretty much immediately that this takes place in the contemporary modern world, where they look up at the sky, like, and they see, because the thing is, they're in this village, but it's not like magic barrier. They look up and they see planes sometimes. They see a plane, or like a, you know, like a trail of a plane going through the clouds, and they'll be like, ah, 'tis a mighty dragon wind today, right? And so within like the first few pages of the chapter, you have helicopters storming the village, Asa and the Kagamori clan breaking in to try to bring back Yuru, to take her brother away from the village, right? So it makes you question, like, okay, who's right and wrong here? The Kagemori clan, are they the good guys? Are the people of the village, are they the good guys? Are they both the bad guys? Is one of them, are they both good? Like, what's going on here? They might turn out to both be good intentioned, and then there might be another villain revealed later that's beyond both of them. Who knows, right? But considering the theme with duality, I'm not really sure about that, right? So Yuru gets taken out of the village by Dara, and so he's like the one, like, he's aware that it's like not really the 1600s. He's from the modern world, and he brings stuff and various like food supplies and everything to the village. And so then he has a gun, and he's really cool, and he's like armed out to the ass, and he like shoots a bunch of the invaders and gets Yuru out of there, and they escape, and Hana's there and helps them get out of there. Okay, and so another aspect of this is Yuru learning about the outside world. Okay, it's like, okay, time to stop at this rest stop, you got to use the bathroom, here's a rice ball that we bought from the gas station, oh my god, this is the greatest thing I've ever eaten in my life, and you know what, there's a lot of series that do this aspect of like time traveler kind of. He's not a time traveler, but you know what I mean, that kind of aspect. And they don't focus on it too much, or they use it just in the background for comedic effect. So it is used for comedic effect because it just is, but I think it's done the best here than most other series I've seen them tackle this. And also, there's an angle of this that most other series don't use it for, and it's the idea of like, okay, somebody gets taken out of a place where they've never experienced modern technology before. Like, okay, so we got to teach them about a cell phone. We got to teach them about what a TV is. We got to teach them about what cars are. And by the way, there's a hilarious part with the car where they just basically explain to Yuru, like, yeah, it's just like a horse that runs on oil instead of hay, because they have to explain it somehow. And then there's a cover page of them going to a gas station to fill up the car, and then Yuru and right and left, his Tsugai, are like at the front of the car with a bucket of water and a bunch of hay, and it's like, eat up, car, eat up so you can get strong and carry us to our next destination. It's shit like that. There's another one where they go to a park, and then right and left, who are these demons from like the Edo period, are like on a teeter-totter in the background, and right is like this big muscular dude on a teeter-totter, like, yeah, and then left is like this very like stoic big sister character that's like, this is amusing. It's just like shit like that in the background. Makes me laugh so much. There's one joke that made me laugh harder than it should, where they go into this mansion, the Kagemori mansion, and then they left. And then Dara is talking about how, like, oh, there were probably cameras all over the mansion, like closed circuit cameras, so they definitely know what we look like. And Yuru doesn't know what a camera is. So the way that it's kind of pronounced in Japanese, like, kameru, kame, turtle instead of camera. So Yuru is just picturing, like, a little thought bubble comes up, like, they had turtles to watch us, and he just pictures a bunch of turtles, like, watching from the hallway. It's like little shit like that that's, like, so funny. But beyond the comedy is the idea that Yuru has to embark on a mission of social learning. He knows nothing about living in the modern world. There's going to be more than that than just learning how a phone works or learning about a bus schedule. You know what I mean? It's social learning about how the world is, all the cultural norms and stuff, and things that are beyond, like, what he can even really comprehend, growing up in this tiny little mountain village that's trying to make him think it was the 1600s, you know what I mean? So he has to learn all of this, and there's chapters dedicated to that, where it's like, okay, social learning time. Let's go to the park. Let's go to a mall. What do you need? You know, it's like, well, I'd like to make some arrows for battle. It's like, so let's go to the store. Let's go to the craft store. What do you need? Like bamboo and a knife. I guess I can, do they sell deer? Because I could kill a deer and then I can make glue out of its hooves if I boil it. And Dara's like, here's wood glue, man. He's like, oh my God, how convenient. You know, it's just like little things like that. Like, dedicate a big chunk of a chapter to, because it's not just about the comedic element. That's part of it, sure, but there's other stuff here. Oh, going back to the Tsugai, now that I remember the shopping mall section of this. Okay, so the Tsugai, right? They're demons from another realm, so you would assume that they're, like, invisible and ethereal to regular humans, like they're outside the spirit, like they're outside the physical world. No, they're not. And that's what makes this so cool, a more free reign of what you can do. A lot of times in manga, you'll basically explain it away like, oh yeah, you can't use guns on a stand. You can't kill a soul reaper with a flamethrower, because those are, like, man-made physical weapons, and that puts more focus on, like, the magic aspect of it. You know, like, only stands can defeat other stands. You would think the rule is only Tsugai can defeat other Tsugai. No, that's not the thing. So they are invisible, as in normal people cannot see them. Usually, there are exceptions, but they are not intangible or ethereal. They interact with the world around them. They're just invisible. And they can choose whether or not to make themselves visible. They can go up to any human anytime they want and just make themselves visible and everybody can see them. They don't do that because it would tend to freak people out, but they could do that, okay? And there's a scene in the shopping mall when they're going through the checkout and the cashier is, like, ringing out their stuff, like, okay, wood glue, beep, bamboo, beep, and she looks up and she sees the Tsugai, like, big muscular dude and shit, and just like, okay, so your total's gonna be $27.52. All right, here's your receipt. Have a good day. Manager, can I go on my break? I think I just had a hallucination. And then they're walking, Yuru and everybody's walking away. It's like, hey, she just seemed like a regular person. How did she see the Tsugai? And Dara's like, oh yeah, that happens occasionally if you're, like, if you're sleep deprived, you can sometimes see them. You know, if you're very attuned to nature, or if it's like, I haven't slept in a few days, being a cashier, I totally relate to that. And just like having been a cashier, and just like, oh yeah, sometimes humans can see them if they're just really tired. So there's things like that are really funny. And that also opens up the whole slew of tactics that you can employ with fighting against Tsugai. It's not just like, in order to defeat these magical demons, I must also use magic. No, Dara busts out a 50 caliber sniper rifle against these things, and it works, okay? There's at one point where they're fighting these two Tsugai. One is long arm and one is long leg. Their abilities are pretty self-explanatory. One of them has really long arms and one of them has really long legs. And these are these ancient demons that have been sealed away for, like, even longer than right and left. They've been sealed away since the year, like, 800, like 1200 years. These things have been locked away. So they're these ancient demons that are like, no human weapon can defeat us. And then Dara's like, bet. And he just, like, takes a sniper rifle, goes out, hides in the grass, throws a camo thing over, and he's just sniping them from a distance and nailing them in the eyes. They're not healing. They're demons, but they're still biological organisms. At least most of them are. So they're getting shot. Their eyes are getting blasted out. Like, I can't see. You know, just like, yep. You know? And so I love that because that lends to so many. Now, it doesn't always work. Like, right and left are basically stone statues, so guns don't work against them. There's even a scene early on where they bust out pistols against them and it doesn't work. And this other guy, you know, get out of the way, and pulls out a shotgun, and then that doesn't work. They even bust out, like, a grenade launcher launcher, and that doesn't work. So they're really tough and hardy, so it doesn't work on every single one of them. But the fact that they do have an interaction with the world in that way, and that guns and like modern weaponry can be used against them, as like, I think Arakawa would have been, it would have been a really silly move to just remove that aspect of it from the series, to just have a world it's like, oh yeah, it takes place in the modern conventional world, but yeah, guns don't do anything against them, so don't even bother, because that immediately removes anybody that doesn't have a Tsugai. Just like, yeah, you're not relevant to this story, right? God, I feel like I've been going on about this forever, but seriously, I could still keep going. Let's see. Actually, okay. Oh yeah, there's another Tsugai I forgot to talk about. Okay, Haruo's. Haru's is great. It's rabbit and tortoise. Get it? Because rabbit, fast, tortoise, slow. So it's that kind of it. So you get some that are pretty obvious. There's even a Tsugai pair that are yin and yang. They literally take the appearance of like a yin symbol and a yang symbol, and they basically trap people inside of them. Like, so the I forget which is which, yin and yang. I think yin is white and yang is black. So the yin aspect will like eat you, and then you'll end up in like a white void, and you're like trapped in like a pocket dimension. And then when it spits you out, you can leave. So it's basically like hide and seek kind of an ability, right? Where it eats you and then you're trapped in like the seal until it spits you out kind of a thing, right? The Tsugai have personalities, like right and left do, and so you kind of have to be nice to them, because like they're bound by a contract, but if they want to leave, they can kind of. There are ways to get out of there. It's funny because there's one character that has yin and yang, and Asa, negates that contract and takes yin and yang for herself. And so, he's like, but they're just Tsugai, they're just tools for us. And it's like, dude, if there were demons, like legit actual demons that existed in your world that you can make, contracts with to have them obey you, why wouldn't you be as courteous and nice to them as possible? Because they're demons. It's just like, yeah, I made a contract with 2 demons. Who cares? They're just like livestock, really. I'm not even gonna name them. Whatever, who cares? It's like, they're demons! Like, you'd be like, thank you for bonding with me, Mr. Demon. What do you want to be called? You would be as nice to them as possible. They're demons, all right? Oh, my God. There are so many other angles to this I haven't even gotten into yet, but I think I tackled all the major things. Like I said, just the way that Arakawa handles like what you would think is just a minor background character is really well done. Like, it's like like I said, she takes, I think, people she's met in her real life, and other mangaka do this. She's not the only one, but she does it very well. Is that she'll, take a character based off of somebody she knows and put them in the story. And it's like, there's a scene when they're fighting against right and left, not right and left, when right and left are fighting against long arm and long leg, right? And there's this older woman that's kind of like an assassin that like followed them in there, and she's kind of just like a background character, like she's not important. Like, the major thing is this big battle going on with long arm and long leg, and so she's just kind of there, this grandma just watching the battle, and it's like, oh, that's right, you're here. And it's like, well, what can you do? Do you have Tsugai? It's like, yeah, I don't keep them with me. They don't follow their masters around all the time, so you can leave them behind. He's like, okay, so they're not like completely bonded to you, which leaves also a lot of freedom to like what you can do with this. Like, oh crap, I left my Tsugai at home, so I guess I can't fight today, right? And so with this like grandma character, they like, oh, okay, cool, well, you can help us out with this fight. And then afterwards she's like, yeah, can you let me out? I need to get home and cook my husband dinner. And it's like, oh, what does your husband do? It's like, oh, he's just a civil servant, he doesn't even know I'm an assassin, I do this on the side. It's like, oh yes, of course. And then she walks out and go home, and I'm just thinking, oh, she's gonna pop up later. I can't wait to see the grandma again. I think this is gonna be really cool for her character. Just little stuff like that I love in this series. Yeah. All right. Well, anyway, I think that's it. I went through this in a weird slapdash kind of way, but that's how I do stuff, man. That's how I do my videos. If you have not checked out Daemons of the Shadow Realm or Yomi no Tsugai, please go check it out. Volume 1 is available right now in English at most major bookstores. I bought this at Barnes, so go check that out there. And like I said, if you're into Full Metal, you'll definitely like this. There was the other, there was the Heroic Legend of Arslan, or the Heroic Knight Arslan. I remember that was another series that Arakawa wrote. Only read a couple of chapters of that. I didn't really get super into that one. And then there was Silver Spoon, which I think is more of a slice of life, kind of more realistic. I think that one also takes place in like a modern setting, whereas Full Metal took place in like early 20th century. It took place around like World War I era. It was in a different world, Amestris, but kind of parallel to that in terms of technology. Like they had trains and stuff. not just in a period piece, she's utilizing the modern world as not just a backdrop. It's not just like, it takes place in the modern world, that way I don't have to do research about it. No, the modern setting is a huge premise for this. Okay, so that's another reason. So check it out. It's great. I've said that about 30 times by now, but I mean it. Okay, have a great one, everybody. Teching signing out.